Hi, welcome to Iowa Ideas. This is session 3, Empowering Mental Health Providers for a Diverse Population. I'm Trish Mahaffey. I'm a reporter with the Gazette. I cover state and federal courts, and I'm going to be your moderator today. In this session, we're going to talk about what can be done to encourage more diversity in the mental health profession. Studies have shown having a mental health professional who has life experiences similar to patients can build empathy and reduce feelings of isolation. We'll also talk about why that's important for the treatment process. First, I want to take a minute and thank our presenting sponsor, ITC Midwest. Their support helps make this free for everybody. Please submit your questions during our discussion in the Q&A box or in the Zoom chat, and we'll get to those probably near the end of the discussion. I'm going to go ahead and have our panelists introduce themselves today. We've got 2 on the panel. And Jennifer, you want to start?
Sure. Thanks, Trish. My name is Jennifer Becker. I am a licensed mental health counselor and approved clinical supervisor in Cedar Rapids. I own a practice insight therapy group, and I also currently serve as the Iowa Mental Health Counselor Association president.
Okay. Thank you for being here today.
I'm Daryl Bird. I am a therapist with the Ally Center in North Liberty. I don't have any supervisors or anything like that. A lot of my clientele are people of color. I have a lot of Black clients. I have also a lot of queer clients and a lot of neurodivergent clients, whether they are aware of it or not. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for being here today. I appreciate it. So let's just start out. How do you all want to start out? I was just going to ask if we could start out maybe talking about what can be done to encourage the diversity, and what's the current situation with that. I know that nationally it's a problem, and I'm assuming it's also a problem here in Iowa.
There is a not incredibly diverse population here, although our diversity is increasing. When the diversity of the population is limited, therefore diversity of providers will also be limited. I will often talk with clients who are looking for a specific referral, maybe it's for a friend or a family member of a provider that has something in common with them, whether they are looking for a provider who is LGBTQ identified, whether they're looking for a provider who is of the same race, nationality as them. Those are often an endangered species in the state of Iowa, is how I refer to it, because we have so little diversity when it comes to providers. Daryl, would you agree?
Oh my God, absolutely. And I also think that lack of diversity in itself, I think, deters people potentially from becoming providers.
I agree.
Because to an extent, like, if you, like, you can logically know, like, okay, like, yes, I can be a therapist if I want to, but if there's not one that looks like you or shares different identities with you, that's a lot harder to, like, really feel, because it's one thing where it kind of can feel like lip service of, like, okay, yeah, like, I can, but, like, I don't see any Black ones, so I don't see how that's actually possible.
Yes.
And I think also just the lack of diversity isn't appealing for a lot of therapists of color or of other diverse identities as well, because then it's like, if I feel like I'm not going to fit in or have a place, why would I go there?
Mm-hmm. I think it's also worth considering the process for becoming a therapist in Iowa. So when someone goes to school in any form of program, whether it's a social work program, a counseling program, or a marriage and family therapy program, after they graduate, they are required to undergo supervision. So one of my credentials as an approved clinical supervisor, Daryl had said she doesn't work with supervisees yet. That's what we're talking about when we say supervision. There's a required period of 2 years after someone has graduated where they have a provisional license and they undergo supervision from a provider who has a higher level of experience. And it's to ensure safety of the public. These supervisors are approved through the what used to be the Iowa Department of Public Health and is now DIAL. Now, if you are a person of color, or if you are a person of any kind of diversity, and you want to become a therapist, you will have to undergo that supervision. If you don't see any supervisors that look similar to you or of similar backgrounds to you, not only is it about clientele, but it's about, am I going to feel comfortable processing with this clinical supervisor these issues? It starts all the way at the bottom when it comes to providers and them getting into the field.
And I think on the other hand too, with like schooling, especially like undergrad, obviously expensive, graduate school also expensive, and especially if you're not from the state, out of state tuition's crazy. It is so expensive to go to school out of state, and then you go to school, graduate, have to pay for it and take the licensure exam. Well, at least for me, like 2 of them, because I had to take one to get licensed. I had to take another one for my independent licensure. And then on top of like, you take your exam, you pass your exam, the 2 years supervision, you might have to pay out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be really, really expensive, depending on how much the clinician charges per like supervision hour.
I can imagine. And then you still have the school loan problem too, if you've had to borrow money, which most people do, and then they have to pay it back, and you have to deal with that too once you get out. I mean, that happens in a lot of professions, but I know that it hits the mental health professionals hard too. So, so what is? Are there any programs that like encourage people to go into people of color or of another, in a marginalized community to go into the profession at all? Is there anything out there like that?
I don't know about profession specific. I know a lot of like colleges and universities do have, well, maybe not now, had a lot of programs for like different marginalized groups that may encourage them to do a bunch of different things, but it was more specific for like that group, whether it's like Latino students or Black students or queer students. For therapy and counseling specifically, I am not sure if that is like a thing.
I think that the programs, or the focus of programs specifically in the state of Iowa, is largely dependent on the staff, on the faculty who make up that program, because ultimately in the therapy world, we all have different interests, different niches as therapists. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know that all professors in these programs are providers. I think most of them are or have been at one point in time, but they have their areas of interest and their areas of passion. And so if the providers / faculty members who are making up that program have an interest in something, then I think they tend to make that more welcome to their population. I think that it's difficult to look at it from a larger perspective and say, the University of Iowa caters to this versus the University of Northern Iowa caters to this. I think it's more about who is heading up that program at any given time, and do they, because of their interests in the field, make it more welcoming or more appealing for certain groups. I think that from my perspective, providing supervision, working with a lot of provisionally licensed providers, what I usually say to people is it's really important to consider what is important to you. Why did you want to help people? Why did you want to get in this field? No one gets in this field to get rich. They get in this field because they want to help. We all have different reasons that we want to help. So I think you have to really go back to the core of, why am I here? Why did I start this? And how can I help? And so it's kind of a crappy thing to say, right? You're saying to someone, like, even though you might not feel super connected to your supervisor, even though you might not feel super connected to, parts of your clientele because they look different than you or they are different than you have to keep pushing through that for the bigger reason. It's that personal idea of, what do you want to advocate for? What do you want to promote? why are you here? I'm here to help. I think Daryl is too.
Sure.
Like your why is going to be the thing that's through a lot of different trials and tribulations, especially throughout your career, will keep you there.
Yes.
As long as you're able to still maintain some kind of connection or like root with it.
And there is always advocacy. There are always groups that you can get involved with outside of your clinical training. Outside, some of them you can get involved with as a student. That's something that the Iowa Mental Health Counselors Association does. We have student members on our board. We have different volunteers. We do a lot of legislative advocacy. There's what can you do to help people in your office, and there's what can you do to help more people in the state of Iowa or the states wherever you are working. I think that if I'm talking to anyone from a marginalized group who has thought about at some point in time becoming a therapist, I would want to talk about that as well, because I think it's more than just therapy training. In places like Iowa, where we are largely white, cis individuals, I think that really helping others who are from marginalized groups to see like you can do something here. Even if you're an outlier, you can absolutely do something on the small scale and the large scale.
Okay. I was just saying, and this is like across the board. I mean, it's other states too that still have, that do have this problem of lacking
Absolutely.
diversity in the mental health field. I mean, why do you think that is necessarily? Is there anything, you can point to, or?
So I know for like the African American community specifically, mental health and therapy for very, very long time, and still now in some family systems, that's not a thing that you do. You don't talk about that. What you can do is go pray about it, but that is not a thing that is addressed. And so with that kind of stigma, you're likely not going to be thinking about becoming a clinician as much if that is like what you are raised with and that runs through your family for generations.
Mm-hmm. I know that there's a pretty large discrepancy between women versus men who are in this field as well. And I think that comes from a similar place to what Daryl is talking about. For women, it has been societally more acceptable for women to show emotions, for women to have emotions and experience them in some way that other people can see, where it's not as socially acceptable for men to do the same. This field is full of women. Lots and lots of women. That's not to say that there are not men in the field. There are, but they are another one of those groups that like an endangered species in this area. It is maybe in larger cities, you might see more men in this field, but largely dominated by women. I would say that within the queer community, I think that this is also similar. It's what experiences did you have before you got to a point where you felt comfortable identifying outwardly as being someone who was queer? And do you feel comfortable having that on display? Because to some degree, if we're talking about relating with clients who have similar experiences as you, that means that you are on display in a different way. And that is a big ask for some people. You look at the numbers and you look at the statistics on trauma, on the number of individuals who identify as queer within the LGBTQ community who've experienced trauma. Those percentages are scary high.
Yeah, I could see that. I was going to say, I just was looking at statistics on this, and it was on the American Psychology Association, and it was saying that the psychologists were 85% white, 5% Hispanic, 4% Black, 2% Asian. It's just kind of incredible when you start looking at the figures, because I think the general population, they don't really think about this or maybe even know that it exists unless they're of people, one of the people of color or in the queer community or whatever. And so I think that's really kind of startling, because when you look at the numbers of how many people out there are needing mental health care, it's kind of alarming. I mean, you just don't think of it, or I hadn't really thought of it a lot, I guess.
Yeah, I think if you look at the numbers, depending on where you find them, what you'll usually find is that 80% or more of progress made in therapy, regardless of who the client is made out of the rapport that is built with their provider. So what that's saying is that regardless of the modality, regardless of who you're seeing, regardless of what they are doing, the relationship that you have built with them is ultimately what helps you progress. That is what helps you progress more than any modality, method, or treatment. So if you consider that, how much that relationship means, if I look the same, if Daryl looks the same as my client, or as her client, I apologize, you're going to have a leg up, right? You're going to have a leg up and almost a head start in making progress in therapy. If during that first session or those first few sessions, they make a connection with you, you increase positive outcomes, you get people who are bought into the therapeutic experience. It's huge. That's absolutely huge. And if we don't foster more of that, I don't know what it's going to look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was looking at more, numbers, but it was talking about the cultural differences, that if you're not sitting across from somebody that can't even relate to that, then it's going to be pretty hard to, to get anywhere in mental, in a mental health session or whatever. And so, I mean, just thinking about if I had a problem and, it's not like you want to go somewhere and be judged on
Yes.
on whatever it is, and so I mean, I think Daryl we had talked about that a little bit earlier, and you brought up a couple of things about that.
Yeah, like you don't want to potentially face judgment, and you also don't want to have to like explain concepts or a use of language or different types of trauma to someone who likely hasn't experienced them, or just you can't, like, I mean, you don't have to like say like I have trauma, but like if my skin does not look like yours, we might not have similar trauma, but we're from the same ethnic background. Like, we probably have some overlapping traumas because systemic racism is a thing and generational trauma is a thing. I lost the train of thought. Sorry.
Okay. I really encourage, I think this translates. So if you're a person who's looking for a therapist, it's important for you to be informed. It is okay for you, because therapy, you have to consider, like any type of provider that you see, this is a different kind of relationship. If you get referred to a cardiologist, or you get referred to an allergist, or you get referred somewhere, you pretty rarely get to choose who you see, right? You just get assigned to someone and you get scheduled for an appointment. But that's because you're seeing those providers much less frequently. When you are seeking a provider for therapy, you're probably going to be signing up for seeing somebody maybe weekly, maybe every other week, potentially monthly. It's a much different relationship. So it's okay to be informed and to ask, like, I would really like someone who has this shared experience or that shared experience. We as therapists are really used to those questions because I think it matters and makes people feel more comfortable. Then there's how that translates into providers and bringing providers coming into the field. What do they have to offer that they can provide that? Someone who is from a marginalized group, from some other place, from some other group that there are not as many therapists, think about what you can offer to clients with that. Just being who you are. That's a huge motivator, or it can be.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I can see that. I mean, that's why I thought, I guess people hadn't thought about it before, but it does really make a lot of sense that you'd want to go to someone who had, similar life experiences that you had.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because the therapeutic relationship is outside of the frequency, like just emotionally, it is very different than even like, hopefully different than it would be with like a friend or like your partner, in just the vulnerability aspect of the relationship. And knowing, I guess, the structure of the relationship as well, because there is also an inherent power dynamic because I'm a therapist and you're my client.
Mm-hmm. And you're sitting in my office and I'm asking you to dump your soul out to me.
Yep.
I'm asking you to tell me your deepest, darkest fears and the things that you don't want to talk to other people about and feelings of shame. And if you're doing that with someone like we were talking about earlier, judgment, that feeling of judgment, if you're doing that with someone who you feel like could be potentially judging you, why would you do that?
Yeah. Has Jennifer, from the association standpoint, have they looked into things about trying to get more people from diverse communities in the profession? Is there anything like that you guys have done, or?
Yeah, we were a part of advocating for specific legislation. I think it went through, it was either last year or the year before, maybe it started the year before, that established a loan repayment program for the state of Iowa that was specifically for providers working in rural communities. There was funding that was approved. So IMCA works with a lobbyist, and that lobbyist helps us to navigate the administrative nuances of the I'm losing the word of the legislative system here in Iowa. And so that program was largely established to help providers get some alleviation from the stress of, like you were talking about, Trish, that student loans, get some alleviation from that if you are willing to work with clients in rural communities. And there is more diversity in rural communities. I would not say that the focus of that was directly on increasing diversity, but I think that diversity was a piece of it. It was a byproduct. And that did pass, and that is in effect. And I want to say they expanded it. The state did, but I'm not positive.
Okay. And was that federal funding, or was it
state funding?
State funding? Okay.
Yep, it was state funding. So if you've ever heard of loan repayment programs that are federally based, they have a lot of them for teachers. They have people who have worked in nonprofit areas in the mental health field for extended periods of time. That is federal based. This was a state fund that was potentially for providers in Iowa, because what they were trying to do is attract more providers to Iowa, because Iowa is more frequently losing providers than we are gaining. And so when they're losing providers, they're not just losing white cis providers. They are also losing providers of diversity.
Yeah. And I know it's got to be 10 times worse in the rural communities, I'm sure.
It's pretty significant. Yeah. There's a huge need.
Is there anything else that maybe the association has done to kind of help that, or looked into legislation at least to help that?
Well, there's nothing specific that I'm aware of. What I do know about the legislative piece is that we work with kind of what we're given. Obviously, we can't introduce things. And so it's whether or not, these bills are being introduced, these pieces are being introduced. We discuss with membership and with people that are not part of membership, other providers in the field. And so, are we for this? Are we against this? And then we register as for or against. And so then our lobbyists will advocate in either direction.
Sure. I just wanted to ask that because I know sometimes, associations do have, things in the work, or they're working on, some, certain things. And so I know there's so many obstacles with that also.
There is.
Obviously.
Yeah. It's good to be a part of the process, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, anything else, guys, that we can discuss about this?
Like I had said before, I think that if you're a client who's looking for a provider, it's okay for you to know that you can ask those questions. I think that what I was told in my program is that every therapist needs a therapist. And so we are not strangers to this. We're not just advising other people. We also are looking for our own providers sometimes. And sometimes for us, it's about, okay, we know too much. And so we know about all of these different modalities, and we know too many other providers in the field. And so it's finding someone that has the area of expertise that you're looking for. And whether that includes, that's probably going to include some clinical direction, but it's also going to include what they look like. Do I feel like they have similar experiences to me? If I am someone who is middle-aged and the providers that I'm finding are much younger than me, it might feel off. If I am someone who is much younger and all the providers are older than me, it might feel off. We're talking about more than just race and sexual orientation. We're also talking about just what do they look like? Do they look like, I've had clients tell me that, my headshot, that they contacted me for therapy because I look like someone they could drink wine with. They want to be able to relate to you. And so as someone who is potentially considering becoming a provider, whether it's going to school or whether it's, hey, I've been in this program, but I could go different directions, whether that means I get a license and work directly with clients or do something else, it's back to that why. And it's what do you have to offer? And it's, do you want to make a difference and how do you do that? Sometimes starting to make that difference is just being there, is being present and listening and helping that person feel seen and being who you are in your humanity with another human in the room. We're all humans. I think that it's incredibly important as a provider to be human with your clients. And I think all of that factors in here when we're talking about attracting more diverse providers into the field in Iowa.
Okay. I was going to say, is there, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was going to ask you, something when you were talking there. I was going to say, does there need to be any, maybe added training?
For providers?
For providers, yeah, to address some of these issues?
I actually think that would be a great idea. The state of Iowa doesn't have a lot of training requirements when it comes to licensing. They have a whole number of continuing education units, CEUs. They have a whole number that you have to get each licensure period, but they don't have any specific requirements within that, with the exception of ethics. There is a requirement that if you have to get 40 CEUs, then 3 or 6 of them need to be ethics-based. But we don't have a requirement for any kind of cultural diversity. There are other states who do. Every state, structures this differently, but Iowa doesn't have a requirement for that. I think it would be smart. I think that currently it's up to people to get it on their own, right? Whether that means they got it through their program where they graduated or whether they seek it out, because all of our CEUs after graduation are our choice. It's entirely based on what do we want to focus on? What do we want to get training in? Do I want to become an EMDR provider? Do I want to become an LGBTQ informed provider? What do I want to do? I take trainings accordingly because there is no requirement, no specific requirement for it in the state of Iowa.
Okay. So you would have to take a specialized course or training in that.
And you'd have to look for it. That's the point, is that you would have to say, I want to do this. This is important to me and my practice. So I'm going to seek this out and do it on my own.
Okay. Have you done any of those specialized, either one of you, specialized trainings?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Okay. So are they offered in Iowa that you know of?
I think, go ahead, Daryl.
Oh, I was going to say, I know for me, I'll do a lot of online trainings. So it's, I guess, for me, easier to find them that way. In Iowa specifically, and in person in Iowa,
I agree. I think post-COVID, it's difficult to find any training in person. There are some here and there, but I try to look at positives when I can. And I think one of the positive things that came out of the COVID pandemic is people getting more comfortable with virtual. The accessibility of therapy and any kind of mental health care increased dramatically because we're able to see people virtually now. There were people who were seeing clients virtually prior to COVID, but it was a fraction. It was a fraction of what it is now. Now I don't know any therapists, any providers who are not doing some kind of hybrid. So that convenience factor also translated into training. So I don't know about ones being offered specifically in Iowa, but I know that providers in Iowa can absolutely take them. They just have to take the time to look.
Okay. Because there is a shortage, of mental health providers. Is there any talk, or maybe this is already happening? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. But can other therapists from like outside of Iowa practice in Iowa?
It depends on their licensure. So I know, like, for me as a social worker, I can practice in another state if I'm duly licensed with that other state.
So you have to have the other
At least
state.
for me, yeah. I'm not sure about other.
It's the same.
practitioners.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
You have to hold a license in the state where the client is present. So,
Okay.
for example, I hold a license in Iowa, but I also hold a license in Colorado. I live in Iowa. I could still see a client in Colorado who is present in the state of Colorado while I am present here because I hold a Colorado license.
Okay.
But if a provider, so if Daryl wanted to see a client who was living in Illinois, if she did not hold an Illinois license, she could not see them ethically.
Okay. So that's not necessarily a fix to help, because no, most providers probably aren't licensed in, more than one state, or maybe they are. I mean, I don't know. So
some are, and there has been quite a bit of legislative movement. Each part of the field has a different counseling, or has a different compact, is what they're calling them. So the interstate counseling compact is the one that directly impacts my license as a licensed mental health counselor. The social work group has I'm not sure what yours is called, but it's something similar. It's an interstate social work compact. Marriage and family therapists are the other field, the other level of professionals in Iowa at the master's level. And they, I believe, have one that's in the works, but it's not as far ahead as social work and mental health counseling is. Social work, I think, is way ahead of the game. Mental health, like, we just within the last month, and this isn't Iowa yet, but the interstate counseling compact, the first 2 states just finally went live with it within the last month. So it's growing and it's gaining momentum. But theoretically, what that would look like is if you hold a license in whatever your home state is, you hold a license in Iowa and you become a compact member, then you would be able to see other states that are also, or clients in other states that are also within the compact. But that is proving to take a long time.
Okay. I just didn't know if that was a possible, help or solution to.
Oh, I think it will be.
Shortage or not. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it absolutely will be. We're just not quite there.
Okay.
And Iowa will be a compact state. The legislation has passed here. We're just not live yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I was going to say, is there anything else that we could talk about on this, or any other solutions that you've kind of thought about, or you think would be worthwhile, or even if it's just, your opinion?
I think the biggest piece for me, I kind of touched on before, is, if you are someone who, maybe you're the kind of person that you can make friends with anybody, you talk to your hairstylist and you talk to the cashier at the grocery store, and people just tell you their stories because you are a person who is open and inviting. That's the kind of person who does pretty well in the therapy field. And if you are someone who has considered it, I think, especially if you're from any type of marginalized group, you have to look at, what can I do with this? There will be barriers. I make it sound easy when I talk about it, in part because I've done it for a while. But if this is the end goal, I want to get there, and this is why I want to do it, that you can let that drive you. Mm-hmm. And I think you should.
So, Jennifer, do you mind if I ask, why did you get into the profession? What led you into it?
Absolutely. So my background is actually in clinical psychology. That's where I got my master's. And I have always been a person who loves puzzles. I really like putting pieces together. And I saw human behavior as a puzzle. And me operating in the therapy field, me being a provider and working with clients on mental health struggles, you have to look at, what's going on outside their life, what's going on within their control, outside of their control, societally, micro level, macro level. You look at all of these pieces, and all of those pieces are a part of the puzzle. And so I enjoy helping my clients sort through whatever those pieces are in order to feel better. And because I'm good at solving puzzles, it's satisfying for me. That helps me to continue on in the field because, I hear some really stressful things at my office. And I am really happy to be one of those people that can provide positive support and can help someone through that. I can help them solve their puzzle. That's kind of what got me into it.
Okay. And Daryl, how about you? What led you into it?
So I got my undergrad degree in psychology, and I worked with like a local nonprofit that basically did supported community living work for adults with mental health issues, because I really wanted to work with people and help people through challenging things. I don't really know why that was it, but that's what I wanted to do. And I was kind of toying with grad school originally. Like, I don't know if I want to go. That's a lot more money. I feel like I just graduated. And then I went to the University School of Social Work, had like a pretty informal informational meeting. And I remember they were going through like what the code of ethics was. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. That's me. I feel that way. I feel very strongly about this. I'm going to do it. And so I did it. I also do like a puzzle. I also just really like learning about people and like hearing their stories. I just find incredibly fascinating. And also, essentially, like I enjoy helping people help themselves. And I really enjoy watching people be successful and like progress and just experience a higher quality of life. And I'm very proud of them. So.
Okay. Well, talking about like stressors and hearing all the, stressful things you guys do, how do you each kind of deal with that? How do you each kind of cope with that? I know we're a little bit off the subject, but I think it's still interesting. And I think people find that interesting.
Depending on what's going on, like one of my best friends is also a clinician in our office. Hi, Kinsey. They have a client right now, so they're not watching. But Kinsey Wohlers, they're great. You should see them if they have room. I don't think they do. Oh, I lost it. Hold on. Oh, okay. Sometimes if I'm like, this intake was really stressful and that was like a lot more than I was kind of expecting in my brain, then I'll just kind of word vomit sometimes and we'll back and forth word vomit. And then like, it's just kind of a good little, not venting, but it just feels good to get complex feelings out or like that. A car cry is also helpful if you are driving home. Don't do it on the interstate because I have done that in the past. It's not the safest option. And also just honestly, my own therapist is super helpful if I'm just like, you think you've heard the worst thing in the world and then it just gets worse. And then it's like, okay. I'm happy to help. And also like, good Lord.
Well, that's our humanity, right? That's what I was talking about before. Like we're humans. We're humans sitting with humans helping them. So of course we're affected. And the self-care piece is super important, regardless of how you do it. I would also argue, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, Daryl, but I think that therapists are some of the worst at caring for themselves because we are usually natural empaths, right? And so it's the idea that we connect so strongly with clients that it's easy to do as I say, not as I do. And I'm also like, I fully admit that to my clients. I don't give any kind of misrepresentation. I will say, I'm going to make this sound real easy and I'm going to give you a list of stuff. And that doesn't necessarily mean I follow it all, but I know I should. And, whether you have hobbies, things that you do for fun, things that you try to make time for, like as providers, if we don't do that, it can be difficult. And, what Daryl's saying in terms of talking with a colleague, debriefing, supervision, and I mentioned that earlier, just to get from the provisional level to the independent level in this field. But supervision and consultation is one of those things that when we go to school to become therapists is something they encourage you to do throughout your career. It's required in Iowa for the first 2 years, but it really should never stop after that. And the reason why is because you can't always maintain objectivity. You, as a provider, are going to have your own stressors, things that are within your control and out of control in your life, right? We are not immune to mental health issues. We are not immune to those struggles. We learn how to compartmentalize really well. And so it's important we insulate. It's important that we insulate ourselves with self-care and follow through with it.
Sure.
And I recognize, even as I say that sometimes it's hypocritical because I do not always take the best care of myself, but that is my humanity. Here I am.
I mean, the amount of times I will say to myself, or sometimes just out loud, like, I really should take my own advice.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. And then I just don't always do that. So
yeah.
Well, yeah, it's got to be hard. I mean, you guys got, because I know how that is. You get caught up in work and other people, and you might not take care of yourself. So
I think it's also for me, especially, like, if I have a very long day of seeing a lot of different clients, and depending on, like, if all of them are going through a really tough time, TM, like every single one back to back, I don't have a lot of energy to even, like, speak when I get home. Like, I need to be left alone in my whatever enclosure I am in for at least like 20 minutes before I'm ready to, like, talk about anything, because I am just so exhausted. And that's not, well, actually, it is a lot of days right now, but, like, it also depends on the day I've had and, like, how the day's gone. And so for me, I guess that being said, having just the energy to do self-care can be really hard to find sometimes. And just, like, having the spoons to do that can be really hard.
Compassion fatigue is very real. I would say it's real for all kinds of providers, not just mental health, but it's pretty big in mental health.
I can imagine. Yeah, I would think so. I was gonna say, so what would you say to others to encourage them to get into the field? No matter what community they're from, marginalized or not.
I think you have to look at what you want to do. What do you want to do for people? I'm not just talking about what you want to do for a living, what you want to do with the rest of your life. What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to be a helper? In what way do you want to help? If you are someone who has, kind of like I was saying before with the, you can always make friends, you can always talk to people open up to you, you can use that. You can operationalize your skills. I talk with clients about this a lot. Like, even if you have ADHD, if you have, some other, like, neurodivergence, you can make those skills work for you. We as providers have made our empathy work for us, and we've chosen to use it to help others. And so it's, at its core, it's about what do you feel like you want to get out of your career? This career can be absolutely exhausting, but it's also incredibly rewarding, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I primarily work with clients who have serious trauma, who have experienced some level of significant trauma. And like I said, I hear a lot of rough things in my office, but I enjoy every moment of sitting with my clients because, like Daryl said, we get to see change. We get to see positive change, a positive impact. That's pretty powerful. Not a lot of careers offer that. So but you have to be realistic with yourself that there's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days, and there's going to be barriers, and it's going to be difficult. but that doesn't mean it's not worth it.
Yeah. And Daryl, I was going to ask you, like, do you use those things, within yourself to help, like things that barriers you have?
Yes. So I guess, could you like give me like an example, or like
We
in terms of
were
like
talking.
kind of diversity?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We were talking the other day about your neurodivergence.
Oh my God. Yep.
Yes. Sorry.
Yep, so that was literally 2 days ago. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I understand.
My brain likes to have information and then just for whatever reason just and then it goes away. Yeah, no, I use that a lot, especially learning about my neurodivergence in the last like 5 years has been very helpful for just me in my daily existence. But I'm also realizing like, oh, it's helpful for my clients too, because you don't have to be neurodivergent to like have empathy or compassion or understanding, but it really helps when you're like, no, my brain literally does the same thing and it's crazy work. Or like, oh, yep, I understand that happened to me yesterday. Or just like, you can explain things just, I guess, differently in a way that maybe they'll understand better, especially, or like, everyone's brain is different, obviously, but if there's like a way that this person with ADHD responds better to like information and my brain responds maybe differently, I might be like, okay, I have ADHD, so maybe I'll explain it this way and maybe they will understand it better or differently, or maybe this coping skill or intervention will work better for them than like another one that I was thinking. Yeah.
Right. So I would think that would be helpful to have that as a therapist, actually, so you could help someone else like that. I mean, makes a lot of sense.
I also have ADHD, and I am not afraid to say that to my clients. I like to joke that if I don't write it down, it doesn't happen because I forget about it. So I'm a copious note taker and I make lists and I have to check my lists on a regular basis. And I talk with people about how, if I use myself as an example, like there are methods that you can develop to help you succeed in whatever it is that you want to succeed. So regardless of the barrier, again, you can make it work for you. Sometimes you just have to be creative about it. And different things are going to work for different people. Different things are going to work for different barriers, different diagnoses, different whatever. But we as therapists are not perfect, and you don't have to be.
Well, how does that work for you too when you do have maybe a barrier, but do you share it with your clients or with your patients? I mean, is that like that's not like oversharing, or how do you I guess like.
Yeah, from an ethics standpoint, the consideration is this self-disclosure going to help the client? Is it going to benefit the client in some way, or is it benefiting me as the provider? If it's benefiting me as the provider, if I'm just telling them things about myself, if I'm dumping on them, that is a problem. That's an ethical issue. If I am saying something in a moment where I believe they're benefiting from it, whether it's because they've asked me a question or because they are feeling very isolated and they are feeling like they are the only ones that struggle with something, then it would be more appropriate. And another thing that we also do is not necessarily just provide examples from ourselves, but provide examples of what we've seen otherwise. I've worked with other clients who've experienced the same thing. This is actually a really common experience. And you might not know that because you don't talk to people about all their deepest, darkest secrets like I do all day. But because I do, I know about more of these things. There's research, there's books. Let me recommend this to you. Let me recommend that to you. Lots of people experience this. You are not the only one. You are not lonely. You do not have to be isolated in this. So it's all about the motivation behind it. Everything that a therapist does in session should be planned. It should be planful. It should be specific to whether it's an actual intervention, but it should be purposeful.
Yes. Very, very intentional.
Yes.
With like what you say and do.
Okay. Yeah, that's a thought I had about that, and so I wondered how you guys kind of navigated that.
Yeah. And there are some things that I definitely don't feel comfortable talking about with clients, as I'm sure Daryl
Sure.
feels the same. And then there are others that, like I said, if it's going to benefit them by adding a detail here or there, or talking about my level of empathy because of something like ADHD or neurodivergence, yeah, why wouldn't I?
Absolutely.
I mean, if it helps my client, that's another way that I am similar with them. And I would argue that that falls into that, 80% plus progress made is based on the relationship. If they can hear me say, oh yeah, like I know what that's like. I forgot 6 things yesterday and felt like I was losing my mind. I know what this feels like. That is empathy.
Yeah, it definitely helps a lot for rapport building, because then you basically realize, oh, I'm not the only one who's experienced this thing when I maybe have been in whatever social circles or families I'm in, but this person has also experienced this thing. Okay, I'm a little more relaxed now. I think it's going to be fine. I think we're going to be good.
I was going to say, do you think that stopped people too from going into the profession? Like if they have, something like that and they feel like, oh, I can't do that. I can't help someone, but they actually can, probably.
I think yes.
Potentially. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Daryl.
I think, but it could stop someone. I think it depends on what it is. I think, like, I also struggle with like anxiety and depression, but it's like fairly well managed that I'm able to function in society and in my career. I think it for a lot more poorly managed, or just not managed at all, or if I had wild trauma experiences that I was not healed enough from to help somebody else with, I probably shouldn't go into the profession unless I'm very specific about like who I work with. But that also will narrow down your client pool by a lot.
Yes. And like I had sort of brought up before, the statement that was made to me in grad school that every therapist should have a therapist. Right. It's there are some programs, and I think there's rules on this dependent on where they get their funding from, but there are some programs that require their students who are going through any therapy programming to also attend therapy. And there are others who, if they can't require it, then they strongly recommend it. I know that my program was a strongly recommend. And I think they wanted us to do at least 3 to 5 sessions. So if you are someone who is considering getting into the field and is worried that you can't do that because you have too many barriers, I think the answer to that is potentially you can. You just have to take care of yourself first. It's the oxygen mask analogy, right? It's you have to take care of yourself before you take care of the people around you. We all should do that. I would argue that the vast majority of us do. I don't know if I know any therapists who don't see another therapist. Do you, Daryl? I don't know if I know any.
I cannot think of any who don't see another therapist or like have never.
I mean, we're kind of bought in, right? So we're probably okay.
Yeah, I think we're fine.
I think you guys are great. Well, I was going to say, we just have a few minutes left. I would say, is there anything else that we didn't talk about, or something else that you thought of that you want to bring up?
I'm open to answering questions, but I don't think there was anything else that I was going to add.
I'm also open to questions, but I don't think.
Okay. It looks like we do not have any questions. Which is rare, because usually at least we have 1 or 2. But anyway, so I apologize about that. But I'm sure people are interested and they're watching. But thank you so much for both of you for being here today. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you again on another panel with Iowa Ideas. I want to. Sure. I was going to say, the attendees joining, this is our 9th year, in case anybody didn't know. And I'm going to send everybody to their next session. So thanks very much for joining me.